What's up guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be teaching you the position property value. And if you don't already know, this position property basically specifies the type of positioning method used for an element, and you're gonna see what that means in a second. And let's say we're creating a div, and you'll see why in a second. So I'm just gonna create it and then just go to the styles.css. I'm not gonna write anything else. And here I'm gonna select it and set the width and height to somewhere around 200 pixels. So something like this. And we also have to change the background color because it would be white. So let's actually set it to this Cade blue, or I don't know how to say it, but let's actually open the class server now and see. There we go. So now I'm actually going to show you different positioning values. And so I'll start with the default one, and the default one is going to be static. So let's just type in position and then static. And if we save it and go back, then you can see that nothing happened, and that's because that's the default value. And so the next value we're going to be talking about is going to be the relative. So let's change this to relative. And now, if I actually hover here, then you can see that we have some text. And let's read it. So it says, the position CSS property sets how an element is positioned in a document. So the top, right, bottom, and left properties determine the final location of the positioned element. And so what this means is that when an element has this value, it is positioned relative to its normal position. And so let's actually take a look. And you can see that nothing really happened here. But we've actually unlocked these features, sort of. And you can see that it says we can use the top, right, bottom, and left properties. So let's try to use the top. Let's set this to 50 pixels, right? And so if we go back, then you can see that our cube right here moved down, and so we can do the same thing with the left. So let's do left, and let's do 50 pixels too, like this, and you can see that it moved 50 pixels to the right. And so if we go to our developer console here and select our HTML, you can see that our cube is going to be under the height of the HTML. And that means that, again, our cube is still here in a way, but we just kind of moved it down. And so to show you what I mean better, I'm going to actually create another cube. So let's create another div and add different classes. So this is going to be cube number 1. The one underneath is going to be cube number 2. So I'm going to just cut this out and then select our cube 1, put this here. I'm going to copy these two now and put this in cube 2. And I think I'll actually put this here too. So now I'm going to change the color. So let's set it to something like this. And let's remove this for now. And set the left to, let's do around 80 pixels. Actually, let's do 100 pixels. Why not? And then let's do the bottom around 100 pixels too. And so this is what we end up with. And now you can see that this guy is basically, it should be under here, but now we moved it here. And so you can see that it's kind of on top of this element. And so this is what relative also let us do. So if we actually remove this real quick, then you can see that this is what we end up with, right? And so this value is pretty good to get rid of spaces. So let's say we need to move these two to the left a bit more or something like that, and you don't want to add margins or padding or anything like that. Well, what you could do is just do this. So we go to our div, add some right. Let's do, I don't know, 20 pixels maybe, and same thing with bottom, 20 pixels. Let's take a look, and there we go. So now we've kind of filled up these spaces. And now I'm going to be teaching you the fixed position, and this one is really interesting. So don't skip this one. Right, so now we can delete this cube, or we could keep it whatever you want to do. And I'm gonna add the position fixed. And so what this does, right, is it allows the element to always stay in the same place even when the page is scrolled. So to actually do that, we have to select our body, and then we have to set the height to 100 VH. And I'm gonna actually make a video on this later. And so if we go back here, you can see that we can scroll now. I'm gonna make it a bit bigger, so let's do 150 VH. You can do something different, and you can see that we can scroll now. And yeah, so you can see that now it stays here. It's always gonna stay here. And if we set this back to relative, right, then you can see that when we scroll, it's gonna go away, right, when we scroll. But when we set it to fixed, right, it's always gonna stay here, even when we scroll, right? And you can use the top, bottom, right, as you can see here too. So let's say we wanted this to be like, one of those back to top buttons. Well, you would actually kind of change the width and height. So let's just do around 100 pixels, right? By 100 pixels, and let's add a border radius of, let's do 50%. And that's going to be still too big. Let's set this to 50 pixels, right? By 50. And then we can also add this. Let's just imagine that this was like, actually, never mind. But yeah, so let's say this was like a button for like back to top. It would obviously be a bit smaller with an icon, but let's just say it is. And they're usually either on the bottom right or the bottom left. And to actually change that, we would just do this. So we would just set the bottom to 0. And now you can see that it's at the very bottom. And then we could do left. And this is going to be 0 too. So now it's going to be at the bottom left. And we can do the same thing with the right. So let's change this to right. Like this. And you can see that it's going to be here now. And even when we scroll, it's going to stay here. But yeah, let's say you wanted to move this a bit. So we could actually change this back to left. And we can set this to like 10 pixels. And then this is going to be 10 pixels too. It's kind of like margins. So yeah, so there we go. So this is what the fixed value does. And it's really interesting. So you would kind of usually add this to a nav bar and things like that. And so the next value we're going to be talking about is going to be absolute. And so it's basically the opposite of relative, because we can still add the bottom and left, but it's not like we're adding margin, but we're actually adding it like for the fixed value. And so this is what it means. So I'm going to change this to relative, right? And so if this was, actually no, I'm going to change this to absolute, right? And if this was relative, right, then it would be here. And so now it's like adding margin. So it's going to go up by 10 pixels. Right, because we added bottom, and then to the left by 10 pixels, right? So it'd be somewhere here. But this is kind of like absolute. And so now you can see it's going to be at the bottom left. And then when we scroll, it's not going to stay here because it's not fixed. So this is the absolute. And so let's say we wanted this to be right top. So we can change this to top. Let's say we want it to be at the very top, so 0 pixels, and then let's say we want it to be at the top middle. So let's do left. Let's do around 50%. I don't know. So there we go. You can see that it's at the very top, and it's around, I think it's in the middle or close to it. And yeah, we can also do the top, set it to 50, so you can see that it's going to be here. But when we scroll, it's not going to stay here. So this is the relative value. And then it's pretty close to fixed, but it's not going to stay there when we scroll. And then we have the relative too. So I'm going to talk about sticky, which is going to be the last value I'm going to be going over today. And so for this one, let's actually add an H1. So H1, and I'm just going to copy this actually, put it here. I'm going to move this first cube. Now let's add some text here. So I'm just gonna do lorem. Let's just do 6. Why not? And then I'm gonna add some paragraph here. Add some lorem here. And so now, if we go back here, let's just delete this body. There we go. And so I'm gonna do this. And let's set the width to like 800 pixels, the height to 100 pixels, and let's take a look. Doesn't look too bad. Let's set the text alignment to center, and then let's set the background color to whatever you want. Let's just do this, I don't know, dark sea green. Let's take a look. There we go. We don't really have to set the height, but let's actually just set it to 50 pixels like this. All right, and I'm gonna set the text, so font size 40 pixels. That looks a bit better. And so now let's set the position to sticky, not static, sticky, like this. And so let's see what happens now. So when I scroll, nothing happened. And that's because I forgot to add something. So let's set the top. What am I doing? Let's set the top to 0, right? So now when we scroll, you can see that it's going to be here. But when we scroll, it's going to go to the top 0, right? And so if we set this to top, I don't know, 20 pixels, right? Then this is what's going to happen. Yeah, so these are going to be, I think it was 5 values showing over this video. So if you guys have any questions on them, then leave a comment, right? Like this video if you liked it. Sub to the channel for more content like this. Thanks for watching this video, and see you in the next video.